أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Please keep your lines straight. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
मुबशर क्या ये सेशन क्या नाम है इसका? या अल्लाह रहम करो यार, एयरपोर्ट ही होगा। आ भी नहीं रहा एयरपोर्ट, कुछ भी नहीं आ रहा है। सिर्फ एक सेशन आया था, उसको मैंने कनेक्ट किया और हमारा डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया। ये गैलेक्सी वॉच आ रहा है। नहीं सर, तेरे इसको ब्लूटूथ का नाम क्या है? कैसे करते हैं उसको कनेक्ट कैसे करते हैं? तो वो उसके बॉक्स के अंदर रखना ज़रूरी है कनेक्ट होने तक। अच्छा, बॉक्स खोल के रखो और सर्च करो। अब सर्च करो। अब सर्च करो उसको। एक सेकंड देख रहा है। एक सेकंड। जादू है। केस से निकलता कैसे? अच्छा निकल गया। इसमें केस का है, बटन किधर? ऊपर वाले पे, नीचे वाले पे? केडी एयरपोर्ट्स। हाँ लाइव हो गया। लाइव तो है। हाँ चल रख। हाँ रख रखते हैं।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Those of the brothers who are here, please come closer, inshallah. We will be beginning very shortly.
Assalamu alaikum.
Imam Muhammad Patel sahab, he is all the way from Nigeria. He will be conducting. Please come closer or go ahead so that we are not spread out.
Right, left. Which one? Right.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الكريم. قال الله تعالى في بداية سورة الكهف: إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. وقال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام: من حفظ 10 آيات من أول سورة الكهف عصم من فتنة الدجال، أو كما قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. We begin as always by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sending salawat and salam upon our beloved Master Muhammad, his honorable companions, noble family, and those who tread the straight path. May Allah make us from them. Ameen. Firstly, I'd like to express my appreciation to Al-Mahab and Masjid Farooq for inviting me. And secondly, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you for joining us this evening in listening to and speaking about the Quran, the Book of Allah, wherein lies solutions to our problems for all eternity. The Quran and the Sunnah are two such sources regarding which Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned that I've left these two beacons among you. تَرَكْتُ فِيكُمْ أَمْرَيْنِ لَن تَضِلُّوا مَا تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا. As long as you hold on to these two beacons, you walk in the light and the radiance of these two beacons, you will never go astray. لَن تَضِلُّوا. لَن, for those of us who know Arabic, means never, meaning you will never go astray as long as you hold on to the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah. So with this understanding, we're seated here today, that how can we get some of this guidance from the Quran and how can we take it and walk with it so that all the issues or many of the issues that we face living over here in Alberta, living in the Western society, we will find solutions for that. Okay. Surah Kahf contains within it 4 stories or incidents. Now, just to get a trivia from all of you, get you brothers engaged. The first story is obviously about the sleepers of the cave, which our entire talk today is based on. There are 3 more stories that I want to hear from all of you if you know who is involved, who is the highlight of that story. So the second story, the 2 brothers or the 2 men in the garden or the orchard. Third story, Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam, which is quoted to this day. 46 lessons are extracted from that. Probably more could be on how to behave as a student and how to behave as a teacher from that entire story of Musa alayhi salam with Khidr alayhi salam. And the 4th incident, Dhul Qarnayn. Okay. So these 4 incidents come in Surah Kahf. Okay. Now, alhamdulillah, when we were studying, we went over all 4 of these in different sessions with the adults in a halaqah in Durban. But right now, we're just here to do the one story, the highlight of the story of the surah. The surah is named after Kahf. Hadith of Rasulullah, he mentions the virtues of reciting Surah Kahf. So obviously, we know Friday comes, our parents tell us, or if we're older, we know it in ourselves that we have to read Surah Kahf. Why? Reciting Surah Kahf serves as a protection or a measure of guarding oneself from the fitna of Dajjal. The hadith of Rasulullah, he mentioned that whoever memorizes the 10 ayahs from the beginning of Surah Kahf, uslima min fitnat Dajjal, we protected from the fitna of Dajjal. Okay. Then the other hadith mentioned the same thing, that a person should make it a point of memorizing and reciting the first 10 verses. Obviously, the first 10 verses are very easy, and by the time some of our students in Red Deer, they read Surah Kahf so often every Friday that they've memorized half of it already. And this is how many of us, as well as adults, this is how we memorize Surah Kahf, by reading it so often, like how we recite Surah Yasin so often, we memorize it. Right? So we should make it a point of memorizing the first 10 verses, and in general, reciting Surah Kahf every Friday. Okay. Now, the highlight of the surah is a group of youngsters who escaped difficult circumstances and sought refuge, and Allah appreciated this gesture of theirs and put it in the Quran. Okay. It happened 300 years, or it happened, or they slept for 300 years, but the time period of when it occurred, it's from after the bi'tha or the prophethood of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam and before the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in that time period, these few people went and took refuge in a cave. So this is the timeline. Okay. Exact details we don't need to go into, but we do know is that they chose to follow the true creed of Isa alayhi salam. Okay. After what they observed their people doing. So now we're going to go into that. Who were these young people? Firstly, the Quran introduces these people as innahum fityatun. Fitya, right? Fatan means a young person. Why? Hafiz ibn Kathir rahimahullah, whose tafsir we are going to be quoting for our entire talk, Tafsir ibn Kathir. There's many variations of this story, but we're going to follow this one, so you all know the reference now. Hafiz ibn Kathir mentions that the reason why Allah mentioned they were young people, and the reason why young people in general are the first to take the cause of Islam, even when it comes to when Rasulullah did da'wah to the Quraysh, from among the Quraysh you had the elite, the seniors, the nobles, and you had the juniors as well, who were also elite, some of them. But the juniors took to Rasulullah, the younger people took to Rasulullah using their intellect, using their reasoning and understanding that, okay, what this man ﷺ is telling us appeals to logic, appeals to reasoning. We're going to abandon whatever we were following because it wasn't really strong. As opposed to the older people in the Meccan society, they were like, you know what? We know what we're doing. This young person, what does he know? We've been here longer than him. We've been around the block a few times. We know he doesn't need to teach us something different or something new. We'll follow our way, our tradition that we learned from our forefathers, which was idol worship. So in that you see that the people who took the first people to take the cause of Islam were younger people. Over here as well, Allah is drawing our attention to the fact that when you are younger, it is easier for you to go on to the deen. Okay. It is easier for you, not always. Sometimes the challenges are more so. When a person is young, the challenge to go on to the deen, despite the temptation that you have, everything is telling you to go. Otherwise, you've got your strength and your youth and your energy and your vigor at your disposal to do whatever you want to enjoy life. But you hold all that back and you say, you know what? I'm going to be from one of those 7 who was granted shade on the day of judgment. Shabun nasha'a fi ibadati rabbi. Right? Younger person got that vigor, got that energy, can do whatever they want. Sometimes, many a times, the seniors, their parents, the seniors in the family, they might not really know what's happening and you can get away with it. But if you hold yourself back and you say, you know what, I'm a young person, I've got, I have access to a lot of wrong that I can do, but I have to be good because I'm doing this for Allah. I'm not doing it to, appease my parents or make my parents think that, you know what, I'm a good kid. You can get off my back. You don't need to worry about me when I go out with my friends. I'm a good kid overall. I pray my salah and everything. We're not worshiping Allah to appease our parents or to appease society. We're worshiping Allah because we know that this is our struggle living over here in North America. Anyways, now these young people, they made this a point of they observed something wrong happening and they said, we have to do something. We have to disassociate ourselves. Now, this part of the talk is towards the younger people, but the seniors will be thinking, okay, so what about us? What can we do? What wrong have we done that we can't take some benefit from this? The Quran is a book of guidance for every person, for every class segment of society. So the Quran gives that guidance that if you are, past that age, you are a senior or you are middle age, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. You also make that effort and you take inspiration from the fact that you've got these younger people trying to make an effort, in being better. Okay. So the seniors, they support the change in the youth. They guide them with their wisdom that, you know what, you're going to burn out if you go this fast. Take it easy, slow down. And this is where our Ustad, Mufti Ibrahim, our principal in South Africa, this is how he explained it. That for the success and the betterment of a Muslim community functioning and existing, you need both. You need the fervor, the enthusiasm of the youth, and you need the seniority, the guidance, and the wisdom of the elderly. Both of these together will ensure that this society will function and will continue to exist and run. Okay. Now, what happened with these few youngsters? So these few youngsters, the king of that time, his name was Diqyanus. This name is used in Urdu folklore, and you say Diqyanusi kar rahe. It's used as a negative, as a derogative term. That was the king of that time, Diqyanus. Okay. The people in that he ruled over were all Romans. Okay. So Diqyanus was the king, the elite, and these few, every year he would have a get together where it would be considered like a Eid. It happened once a year, where they would all gather and they would worship their idols and they would slaughter animals in the name of their idols. So these few youngsters, they observed this happening. They were also from a privileged and elite background. They came from noble families, Roman families. So they observed all this happening and they didn't know each other before. One stood up and went out away from this area and went to go sit by a tree, in the shade of a tree. Another one also went. They had never met before. They didn't know what each of them was doing. They just like, okay, you know what? I can't take this anymore. Stood up and walked out. Walked out. The first place they saw was this tree there, shade. They went and sat over there. Few of them all went and sat over there. Now, from this, you understand that if you see something wrong happening, or you see something different happening, and I'll mention this loosely, you have to use your tact and understanding for this. You see something different or wrong happening, use your mind. Think, what is this? What's happening? Why is it happening? Right? Does it appeal to logic? Does it appeal to reasoning? No? Okay, you know what? Maybe I should take a step back and think about it. So that's what they did. They took a step back, all of them. And then while they were seated over there, they thought to themselves, each of them is thinking to himself, what is this person here for? Why are each of us here? We don't even know why we're here. But what if one of us lets the cat out of the bag? What if one of us slips up and says, you know what? I'm here because I disapprove of what the king is doing. One of the other people could go and snitch on him. And what would happen? Then he would get in trouble. So they were very cautious. They're like, okay, what do we do now? We want to find out why everybody else is here, but we don't want to jeopardize our safety because we disapprove of what's happening. And if the king finds out that we disapprove of his practice, it would be an act of treason, a rebellion. So they sat there for a while, confused, thinking what to do. And then they were like, okay, you know what? So one person who spoke up, he's like, okay, all of you need to tell the truth why you're here. I will go first. I'm here because what I saw happening over there at our yearly get-together, it didn't sit well with me. I disapprove of this. It doesn't make sense to me. Why do we go and we worship idols and we have a party and we slaughter animals in the name of those idols and we eat that meat? It doesn't make sense to me. I couldn't. So that's why I disassociated myself from that whole thing. What about you guys? And each of those people then said the same thing, that that's why we left, because we felt that what was happening didn't make sense. It was wrong. We didn't want to be part of it. Okay. Point for us to note, when you see something wrong happening, try and distance yourself physically from the wrong that's happening. If you're unable to do that, what's the next option, gentlemen? What's the next option? If you can't physically distance yourself, speak out. Sorry, somebody else said something? Know that it's wrong. 3 levels. Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadi. Mentioned this like 2 Fridays ago when I came over here. Whoever sees something wrong happening, stop it physically. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If you're not able to even stop it physically, at least verbally express your disapproval for the wrong that's taking place. The munkar, it's an act of rebellion against Allah's commandments that's taking place. Then verbally express your disapproval. If you cannot even do that, the last option, know that it's wrong. At least acknowledge and understand in your heart that this wrong that's taking place, that I have to physically witness because I'm living in society, this is wrong. And this is, I normally give an example to our students. Every June, we know what happens in school, right? So the boys come to madrasa and they're like, okay, you know what? This is what's happening right now. Can we voice our disapproval? Or can we go beat up this person who's engaged in this type of behavior? What happens in June? We know. So I tell them that, you know what? Physically, don't do that. Verbally, you might be able to, but if you're on school property, it's a gray area. It's a politically correct era that we live in. So the least you can do is, know that it's wrong in your heart. Know that an open act of rebellion against Allah's commandments is wrong. So this is what they did. They did option 1, where they physically moved themselves away. They couldn't speak out against it, because what would happen if they spoke out? If they spoke out, they would probably be apprehended and put in jail, and their families would probably be harassed by the royals. So they said, okay, we can't verbally speak out against it, but we know it's wrong, so we're going to make our move by distancing ourselves and protecting our iman from the fitna that prevails. Okay. Over here, we don't really have that much of an option to do that, but we do have some sort of leeway, which is to come to the masjid, the house of Allah, an area that is filled with angels, which It oozes ruhaniyah, spirituality. So what they did was, after they got together under that tree and they spoke and they all realized their objective and goal was the same, how to stay away from the shirk and the wrong that prevails in society, they said, okay, you know what? We need to get together at a place and do whichever act of worship that they were doing, salah in the deen of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. So they said, we have to get together and do it at a place. Okay, this is where we find ourselves in here. A century ago, when the first Muslims came to Alberta from Lebanon, I believe, in 1905, they were escaping Uthmani Khilafah conscription. So they weren't very happy about that, so they came over here. They made effort. And then now, fast forward to half a century, 5 decades later, 1950s, 60s, more Muslims came from other parts of the world. What did they do? They made a headquarters. They made masjids. They worked hard to make masjids. My grandfather moved in 1970s. Now, we moved to Toronto, and in Toronto, there was a thing of where you do your Jumu'ah service on Sunday so that you can at least have the sanctity of Jumu'ah. Right? Although they couldn't take out time for, on Friday from work to go and do Jumu'ah, but at least they had that thing that, we need to maintain this form of ibadah. Obviously, Mufti Sahib is there. Mufti Sahib will say that that's not valid. You have to do Jumu'ah on Friday. You can't. Jumu'ah means Friday. You can't do it any other time. But the fact that the people who came, the pioneers, they didn't know much. Or if they did, they just knew basics. But they tried with those basics to put a footprint in the country. Okay, to put an Islamic footprint in the country. You see examples all over the world. Alhamdulillah, I got my studies in South Africa. Mufti Sahib studied there. A few of people over here, they've been or they know. Maulana Iqbal Subrati from Markaz Islam. The ulama that went there, they didn't just come up like that. 150 years ago, Muslims from other parts of the world went to South Africa. They made effort. They built masjids. Once they built masjids, they worked in the hearts of the people to connect them to the masjid. So this is what these young people did. They got an area, a place together to convene. A masjid isn't only a place of worship. It is definitely a place of worship. Masjid comes from sajda, to do a place to do sajda. But it is not restricted to that. There are a lot more things within the parameters of Sharia that a masjid can accommodate, and a masjid should. A masjid should serve as a headquarters for people to, when they have some sort of issues, they should be able to come to the masjid and find solution. They should be able to, for the children's, ilmi needs, for an adult's ilmi need, for a new Muslim's ilmi need, anybody who needs some sort of solace and guidance, that beacon, which we mentioned in the beginning, the two beacons, Quran and Sunnah, they are linked integrally to the masjid. You come to the masjid and you find it over there. That's what it is. So the masjid, the youth got together and they got some sort of an area where they would get together. What was that area? Anybody? The surah is named after that area. The cave. They went to the cave and they called that cave their headquarters. They would go there a few times a week or whatever the case was. They would go there and they would do their ibadah. They would sit and they would contemplate and they would say that all this, this feeble act of worship that our people are engaged in, we disapprove of it. We're not just going to sit there and complain. We're going to work towards working on our progress and our dini, progression. We're going to work on ourselves. We're not just going to sit back and complain. That is something that unfortunately happens, where you get people who they observe the wrong that's happening, but they just sit back and complain. There's nothing constructive happening from their side. That doesn't really help anybody. It just makes you feel like a very negative, pessimistic person who's only talking about the wrongs. Yes, if there's something wrong happening, do something to change. Mobilize yourself. If you can't do that, I'm not saying you're not part of the problem, but you're not helping. Right? So these people would go to the cave, and they would go to the cave and they would worship. Eventually, people see people. People note or they look out for things that are out of the ordinary. So people observe that these few young guys, young men of royal garb, noble family, elite status, they keep going and sneaking away into this cave. So somebody went and saw what they were doing, and like how it happens now, somebody wanted to get favor with the authorities. So they went and they told Diqyanus and his people, or the royal guard or the law enforcement of the time, that there's a whole bunch of young people that they don't worship the way you worship, and they've got their own thing going on. They're doing their own thing, and they're not following the state religion. Okay, Granted, it wasn't much of a religion, but anyways, it was the state religion. It was a state policy. They're not following the state policy. They're engaged in rebellion. They're guilty of treason. So Daqyanus summoned all of them, because as soon as he found out the names, he checked them up. Okay, I know this person's father. It comes from this noble background. These are all Romans. They're all of the elite class. Bring them. Brought them all. And he asked them, what do you have to say for yourself? وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها. When he asked them, what do you have to say in defense of yourself? We caught you doing something wrong. We caught you openly rebelling, even though you were rebelling in a cave, but you are rebelling. So it is an act of rebellion. That's treason. What do you have to say in defense of yourself? What they could have said was, no, Daqyanus, you don't understand. What we were actually doing is we were just doing yoga. We don't really mean to worship, the way you saw us worshiping. We are totally okay with how you do things. But the harara, right? Sharara, the spark of iman in a person is such that it will not let that person, just lie down and just be walking over. Said, you know what? قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها. Our Rabb is the Rabb who created the heavens and the earth. We will never call out to any other deity besides him. لن ندعو من دونه إلها. If we do that, لقد قلنا إذا شطط. If you do that, that's an open act of transgression against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sure, you think you can execute us if we do something, if you think we've done something wrong, but you don't really have that much authority. What do you have? This is the same thing that some other people said to some other king, or pharaoh to be exact. Anybody? The magicians. فَقْضِ مَا أَنْتَ قَاضٍ. When Fir'aun saw that the magicians saw that Musa alayhi salam was on the haqq, they accepted defeat. And they said, what we are doing is just mesmerism. What you are doing, that is something divine. So we accepted what your message and your claim of nubuwa and risala, it's definite. So when Fir'aun told them, really, you're going to do that? You're going to openly defy me in front of everybody after me giving you, incentives of if you beat Musa alayhi salam, I will give you everything. You're going to do that? I will cut your hands off and your feet off from opposite sides and I will crucify you on date palms. What did they say? فَقْضِ مَا أَنْتَ قَاضٍ إِنَّمَا تَقْضِي هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا. Go ahead, pass whatever judgment you want. Your judgment and authority is limited to this world. That's it. That's all you can do. After we pass away, we go into a completely different domain where there is only ahkamul hakimin, that his justice prevails. So this is where you find these young people, when they spoke to Daqyanus, you think they weren't aware of Daqyanus's power and his authority and his tools of tyranny that he could mete out to them to ensure that they stay in line. They were aware of that. They were of the noble class. They were fully aware of the privilege that they had. So he said to them that, really, you're going to be like that? And they said, yes. You people, you and your people are worshiping something completely different. You are following a different creed. We don't agree with it. So that is why we have disassociated ourselves. So he told his, royal guard, take off all their royal clothing that they're wearing, their elite clothing, make him, just bear them in the sense that they make them look like commoners. Right? Now, this is a thing that people of the past used to do. If you have an open act of rebellion, the first thing you do, and to a certain extent, it does exist in some countries, where the authority wants you to toe the line, they will remove the privileges that you have. First, they will give you those privileges, and then they will threaten you to remove those privileges if you speak out against the wrong that they're doing. Okay? So anyways, this is what he did. He said, all of your royal, your attire is going to be removed. You're going to be stripped of your rank. You have no prestige or privilege that exists among the Roman class. You are now like a commoner, a peasant. Basically what he reduced them to. Now go back to, go get out of my sight and sober up and come back. I'm going to give you some time away. Go and think over the wrong that you've done. Open, brazen act of defiance against the state. Go get out of here. So they left. And that time, the Daqyanus genuinely thought that these people would go away and they would regret everything they've done because they have no more social standing. And they would come back and they would say, you know what, king, we made a mistake. You know, we're young, forgive us. You know, we really want to follow whatever it is that you are teaching. The harara of iman, the fire of iman. So they left and they're like, you know what difference does it make to us? If our authority is taken, if our name is ruined, if our, you know, our nobility and all of that is taken away from us, does it really matter if we know we are on the haqq? قال أتحاجوني في الله وقد هدان. Let's put his eyes in my mind. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was faced with his people and his people told him that وحاجه قومه, they argued with him. They're like, you know, what are you even saying? You're talking about your father built idols. You're talking about us not worshipping idols. They started arguing with him. قال أتحاجوني في الله وقد هدان. Are you going to argue with me whereas Allah has guided me? This is how these young people were looking at. لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. And remember this fact of life. لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. If you are on the path of hidayah, nobody who is on dalalah can ever harm you in the real sense of the word harm. لا يضركم من ضل. من ضل, the person who is on dalalah, who's on misguidance or deviance. If you're on hidayah, Allah keep all of us on hidayah. We make that dua in salah every day. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Allah keep us on hidayah. We are in need of hidayah constantly. We are on hidayah regardless of how many there are in the opposition. They will not be able to harm you. La yadurrukum. They will not be able to harm you. And this is the teachings of the Quran. And we go back to Surah Kahf. Right? Surah Kahf contains the solutions to our issues. So we see that these young people, after being given that respite and being threatened and being stripped of everything, they said, you know what? It's okay. Allah is happy with us. We know what we're doing is for the sake of Allah. So they went. Where did they go? Back to the cave. They went to the cave and it was the beginning of the day. They lied down and they fell asleep. فَضَرَبْنَا عَلَىٰ آذَانِهِمْ فِي الْكَهْفِ سِنِينَ عَدَدًا. Allah mentions that we put a covering over their ears so they were unable to hear. Okay. Now, when this happened, there was something that was outside the cave. Anybody? The dog. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَصِيدِ. The dog was outside the cave. Okay. Why was that dog outside? Why was that dog not inside? Firstly, is it permissible to have a dog? Mufti Sahib is here. Right? I feel bad talking about fiqh in front of Mufti Sahib. Yes, it is permissible to have a dog if the dog is going to be a shepherd, if the dog is going to be a hunting dog, or if the dog is going to be, that's the two things. That's two things, sorry. Shepherd and a hunting dog. So besides that, there isn't much leeway. Okay, it's clear. So this dog was a hunting dog for these group of people. So they had that hunting dog, but that hunting dog was outside. Why did that hunting dog not enter the cave with the young people and sleep over there? Anybody? Nobody? The hadith of angels, dogs. Angels don't enter the place where there are dogs there. Place of worship there. Nailed it. MashaAllah. So the dog was outside because angels don't go enter into places where there are dogs there. What other thing, if it is found in a house, do angels not come? Pictures. Okay. It's a mukhtalafi topic, so we won't go too deep into it, but pictures is such a thing which, if it is found, angels of mercy don't come in that house. Okay. If dogs are inside of a house, angels of mercy do not come in that house. So the dog was outside. There's a point to note over here, is that Allah made arrangements for the safety of the people inside the cave by placing that dog outside. That dog was also in a state of slumber. Okay, it is mentioned that the young people that were sleeping, they were sleeping with their eyes open. It's amazing. They were sleeping with their eyes open, and once or twice a year, they would turn. Allah would make it such that they would turn their bodies, their position in sleep, so that they wouldn't develop what? What do you develop if you sleep a certain way for a long period of time? People in coma get it. Bed sores. A person gets a bed sore if they are in a position for an extended period of time. Coma patients, sometimes what happens to them, right? People who are elderly or bedridden, if they don't get proper care, which was uncovered by this pandemic, if they don't get proper care, they get bed sores. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took it upon himself that these young people that were sleeping in that cave, Allah made it such that their bodies would change position in their sleep and they wouldn't experience bed sores. The sun wouldn't hit them. And the dog was outside. So if anybody walking past would see, Allah had made sure that these people would be protected because of that dog being there. وَلَمُلِئْتَ مِنْهُمْ رُعْبًا. And there was an awe that had enveloped the people in the cave and it extended outside. So if a person walked past, you just feel a little bit intimidated, a little bit uneasy, a little bit full of awe. Can't say awful. Full of awe that maybe I shouldn't go to this place because it just doesn't seem right. So all the people who walked past for 300 years, nobody had the courage to go inside. Okay, 300 years. So now you have one report of 300 years, one report of 309 years. 300, 309. Can anybody explain which one is correct or? Perfect. 300 solar years and 309 when it comes to lunar years, right? Because lunar months are less than solar months, right? You get 29 or 30 days. And then solar months, you get 30 or 31 with the occasional 28 and sometimes even rare 29. So 309 or 300 years, these young people slept in that cave. They slept in the morning. When they woke up, they didn't just wake up randomly. There was something that was a controversy or a real theological debate that was happening at that time. So after Diqyanus died and the idol worship stopped and a righteous king came about, in the time of that righteous king, there was this theological debate that was taking place. Some people were of the opinion that resurrection after death occurs only from a soul's perspective. The body doesn't get resurrected. It's just the soul that gets resurrected, and on the day of judgment, it'll be a whole bunch of souls that will be there. Okay? And other people are like, no, body as well. So people couldn't understand that how can a body be turned into a skeleton, and if not a skeleton, worse, cremated, but then still come into existence from nowhere. The ruh, it's easy to understand. The soul goes away, soul comes back. But a whole body reconstructed from nothing or from the skeletal remains of a person just doesn't make sense. So this theological debate reached the ears of the king. And the king was a genuinely righteous person. So he was really perturbed. He's like disturbed. Now this is the state of the leaders of the Muslims. If there is something that that affects the community, the ummah, it keeps the leaders up at night. You look at this in the lives of the khulafa, right? You look at this in the life of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. This is something which, we wish we had leaders like that. Something that is hurting the people or is a disturbance of the people, it keeps the kings up because the kings are like, we are here, we are serving not as the elite monarchs. We are serving as the Khalifa of Allah on earth to ensure that everything on earth is taking place according to the way Allah wants it to be. Okay? This is part of being a human. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created humans, the first human, Adam alayhi salam, first para, إِنِّي جَعَلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا وَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا. So Surah Baqarah, the first quarter, Allah mentions this. This is the reality of why humans were created. Humans were created to uphold and maintain laws of Allah on earth. It's called being a vicegerent, an ambassador. You're not there as the dictator and the extreme supreme commander. That's not the case. You are just there serving the role of somebody who has been delegated from a higher authority. That is who a true king in that sense is supposed to be. So this king was really worried. He was staying up and he's saying, okay, my people who I thought were, Muslims, they are Muslims, but there's serious issues going on over here where they're doubting their faith. They're doubting the concept of resurrection after death. If only something could happen, he was seriously worried. At that time, the sleepers of the cave were made to awaken from their slumber. Okay, 309 years later, that's when they woke up. With this context, with this background. So they woke up And they woke up and they realized the day is almost over, it's evening. So how long did we sleep? And that the Quran mentions it, that they asked one another, how long was it? Maybe a day, because you went to sleep in the morning and now it's the evening, so maybe a day. That seems like the logical reason. So I said, okay, you know what? Forget all of this. We're hungry. Go get food. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا. So they gave, the one person, Jamaat practice, they gave one person, told him go out for khidmat. So from the entire group, one person was nominated. You go out, here's some currency, go and grab food for us. Make sure the food that you get, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا. Make sure the food you get, it is pure. Okay? It is wholesome. It is halal. Why did they mention that? Weren't they living in a Muslim country? They were believers. I know, but why did they have to mention that look for the halal stuff? When they went to sleep, most of the meat was slaughtered in the name of idols. So it was haram meat. So even though they were living in, whichever country they were living in, it was Palestine or wherever it was, or Jordan, what they realized, what they knew, what they remembered was that most of the food is haram. So make sure you find the purest, the halal. Another opinion is that even though the food might be halal, look for the wholesome stuff. Right? Don't look for the fast food. So anyways, they went out. And Mufti Shafi mentions under this ayah in Ma'arif al-Quran that the same ruling applies to Muslims who live in an area where the majority of the food is not halal. They have to make an effort to find halal food. Okay? So this person went to town, and before he went to town, the rest of them gave him some tips. They said, when you go, make sure وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا. Make sure when you go out, you don't draw negative attention to yourself. Right? Because they know the situation they're in. They think that it's still Daqyanus's time. It's still his era. So don't draw attention to yourself because we already have a bad name. We know, everybody knows that we are the rebels. So that person went out, and he went and so in him going out, under this part, وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ, we take lesson from this. Okay? وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا. Don't draw negative attention to yourself. And we take lesson from this. It's more relevant for us because we live in Alberta compared to any other province. Muslims have a reputation. There is a stereotype that exists about us in this province, which some other prairie provinces it does exist, but for the most part, this is the Texas of Canada. So we have this, we know what exists. Don't draw negative attention to yourself. Don't do things that will, you're wearing Islamic clothing. Don't do something that will ruin the name of Islam. Don't do something that is against muru'ah, against being civil, against being dignified. Don't do that. As a Muslim, normally you shouldn't. As a Muslim, we are supposed to know better because we haven't been abandoned for us to look after other people and find our adab from them. No. Rasulullah ﷺ left us a whole legacy of how to be dignified and civilized and respectable and noble and sharif. He left us that legacy. So as Muslims, we don't need to look at anybody else to learn how to be professional and how to have courtesy and how to have all these traits. Rasulullah ﷺ left that for us. But it becomes more imperative that as a Muslim, if you are, we all hope that we can be identified as Muslims, right? It is more important that we don't do something which will cast a bad name to Islam, right? Islam is pure, perfect, pristine. Muslims may make mistakes. It is natural. To err is to be human is to err. We will make mistakes. It's part of life. Every single human being will make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you are not a human being. You might be an angel. And it would be very nice to have some angels sitting over here, but we don't see those angels. We see humans over here. And the struggle of a human is to find that balance between making mistakes, but then acknowledging those mistakes and turning to Allah. That is how the human can go even higher than an angel. Okay? As opposed to being arrogant and saying, you know what? Life happens, made a mistake, just carry on life. It's all right. It's not the end of the world. Then, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. That's even less than the animals. Because animals aren't sentient beings that have intellect. Allah has given us intellect. And Allah expects that because nabtalihi, Allah expects that because He has given us intellect and the tools to perceive, we will be different than the rest of the creation. Anyways, back to this person who was given this tip that when you go out, don't draw negative attention to yourself. So he went out, and he went out looking down, just going to the market to get the food that he needed. He had some currency with him. So he put the currency forward, and then he wanted to buy the food. When the store owner saw that this currency looks out of date, 300 years. I mean, you look at the 2000, $20 bill and the new shiny one. Remember, the new shiny one came out in 2003 or 4. It was a big thing. Now, most of these young kids don't even know the old one. Right? And those of you who have been here longer than that, you know of the $1 bill and the $2 bill from a long time ago, right? So just imagine like that. You've got some person coming to your store, and he's paying with currency that's 300 years out of date. So this store owner realized something doesn't seem right over here. He called his neighboring store owner. He called a few of them. Come over here, check this out. This kid must have picked up a treasure from somewhere. Literally, that's what they accused him of doing. So you must have gone somewhere digging and you found a treasure and you come in over here to buy food with that treasure. No, hold on. I'm getting negative attention to myself. I didn't come here for this. I just want my food. Just let me go. No. You got this money from somewhere. You got to tell us where you got it from. I said, no, this money, seriously, I had it this morning. And then something came out and he said, no, Diqyanus. It's like, no, there's no Diqyanus over here. Diqyanus died years ago, centuries ago. This is a different era. We have a righteous king here right now. So the king found out, and the king was like, there my dua is answered. I was up at night worrying, how can the people believe that a person's body can be kept intact? 300 years living example. This man. So the man said that it wasn't just me by myself, it's a whole bunch of my buddies over there in the cave as well. I said, okay, let's all go there. So the king, royal guard, the commoners, they all went to the cave, and he's like, no, hold on. This is tact. Min adab al-Islam, tact, understanding. He said, you know what? If you all come in there, my buddies will be extremely overwhelmed and will be shocked to be like, what's happening here? We told you clearly, don't go and attract attention to yourself, and you went and came with a whole crowd of people. So I said, you know what? You wait outside. Let me go inside and let me tell them what happened. So they said, okay. So they waited outside. He went inside, explained, guys, told me to go and get food, and I went to go and get food. I swear, I didn't do anything wrong to attract negative attention to myself, but these people just looked at the currency and they're like, nah, this doesn't seem right. So they realized, but we were here for 300 years. Like, what, really? Yes, we were here for 300 years. Like, okay. And then they came inside and they were shown, honor and respect because of them persevering at a time where everything else was going the other way. Okay. This is just, so anyways, from there, then they went out and they got that royal welcome and everything. And then they went back and they lied down one by one, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took their souls away, and that is how they passed away. In this lesson, there are so many, in this story, there are so many lessons for us to take. And the Quran is such that a person right now in front of you in 2022 in March will think of something new. 10 years down the road, somebody will look at that same ayah and will think of something new. It is a limitless treasure and resource of guidance. Okay? We need to connect ourselves to the Quran. We need to find solutions to our issues from the Quran. The Quran is not a book, wal'iyadu billah, that was relevant to a specific audience 1400 years ago in the Arabian Peninsula. No, the Quran is a means of guidance for all of humanity for all of time. So with that, we end. May Allah grant me and all of us protection from the fitna that exists and strengthen our relationship with the Quran. Again, I express my appreciation to Mufti Faisal and the administration of this Masjid in Ilma for inviting me, and may Allah keep all of you on the straight path as well. Ameen. Islam.
Yes. All I can say is I miss you.